Hi everybody, thanks for coming. Thanks for booking on to our session today. So Matt and I work for the National Lottery Community Fund, as Sean said. We both work for Reaching Communities, which is the larger programme of the two, but we'll talk about both today. We'll talk about our Awards for All programme as well. So we're going to give you a little bit of an overview about the Community Fund. We're going to talk about our plans for the future and the very near future. And we're going to talk about our current offer. And as Sean said, we're going to open the floor to questions at the end as well. But obviously do write any in the chat and hopefully Sean or someone will read those out for us later. And we can do our best to answer. If we don't know, we will find out for you. So we are transitioning towards a new strategy. So we're going to talk a little bit about our new priorities and our new missions. The reset is on the 1st of April. So because we're not quite there yet, we don't know it all. We're sort of a bit of a learning curve. So we'll talk to you about what we know today, and then there'll be more to come over the next few weeks and months. And as I say, a bit of a learning curve for everyone involved, really. Just to note, this isn't a call out to funding. Demand is higher than ever for our funding, as I'm sure it is with a lot of the funders you've heard from over the past few weeks at this funding fair. And unfortunately, we are having to say no to strong projects. But that said, we do want to support our local community. So if you've got a strong project, if you've got a good community-led project and you are thinking of coming in for an application, then it would be Matt or myself to contact if you want to have a chat about it before you apply. We are encouraging people to put in applications after April. So nothing imminent, but there's only a couple of weeks left. So. Okay, so you should see a little bit of information on the screen there about the National Lottery Community Fund. So the income of the lottery distributors comes from the sale of national lottery tickets. And of every £2 spent on lottery ticket, 56p goes to the good causes. So the Community Fund, which is our bit, is responsible for distributing about 40% of funds raised for those good causes. And that equates to about 23 pence of every £2 spent on a lottery ticket. Oh, I've just seen that someone can't see the presentation. Can everyone else see it okay?
Yeah, I can see it. So
okay. Well, hopefully most people can. Good. It's got a thumbs up there. So there's a Northamptonshire statistic at the bottom there, but more recently, through our Awards for All and our Reaching Communities programmes, 97 grants have been awarded this financial year so far, totalling £6.1 million. And if you're in the Northants, then 2.7 million of that was towards Northamptonshire projects, and there's still a couple more weeks to go to this financial year, so hopefully that will add to that number as well. So I'm going to hand over to Matt for the next slide.
Thanks, Sarah. Good morning, everybody. I am Matt Cox, one of your funding officers in Northamptonshire. I don't think Sarah mentioned this. It's not absolutely definitive, but generally Sarah is more Northamptonshire and I'm more West Northamptonshire, and we sort of share Northampton town. But across our entire Midlands team, which we are a part of, we have these local funding officers and we sort of share the load where that is required. So it's people like us that will receive your applications, help a group through the process, perhaps of applying even before that, but then receive your applications and take them through our decision-making process. I'm going to talk a little bit now about what it is that those applications can be about, what it is we're looking for in them. And as Sarah said, we are in the process of moving from what has been our strategy. And now I'm going to be joined by a cat. My apologies. They always appear as soon as you start talking. So we've been 6-7 years of our previous strategy. We are about to enter into a new one, which, to allay any initial concerns, is going to be pretty much along the same lines as what we've been doing. So Awards for All and Reaching Communities will remain as our two primary funding streams, and we will continue in a broad sense to be interested in the same sort of things that we have been interested in for the past several years. So there's no massive changes that need to concern anybody hugely. However, as it says at the top there, an equity-based approach is what we've always had, but moving into our new strategy, this is going to become more important to us, in that we are looking, whilst remaining a funder for everyone, to, in a situation where we have not enough funding to support all of the great things that come into us, aim to put more of that funding into the most disadvantaged areas, the areas of need, into communities. And that can be a community that is a local settlement where everybody lives in the same place, or it can be a community of interest where people are sharing similar issues and things going on in their lives. We are going to be looking to try and create a more equitable society through our funding. As has been the case, we are going to continue to expect community to be right at the heart of everything we fund, ideally pushing forward rather than an organisation perhaps saying we're really good at doing something and we're going to go and do it for these people over here because they clearly need it. More of a case of things being from the ground up. Again, it's how we've pretty much always been, but that is very much at the heart of our new strategy moving forward. And we have 4 particular missions which are the primary things that we are going to want to see in an application, at least one of those, and I'll talk a bit more about what those are, or one of us will, as we get further through this presentation. There is also a little bit more of a change about how we look at partnerships, and I'll talk about that again later on. Partnerships being where more than one organisation is going to be receiving and using the funding to deliver something perhaps in a more broad way than one group working much more locally. I think we're good to move on to the next one, Sarah. And actually, I realise now I'm looking at about 3 different things at the same time here. So I'm going to assume you've moved on. I probably ought to check that. Yes, you have. Thank you. So the 2 primary, as a funder, we receive most of our money from lottery ticket purchases, and our 2 primary funding streams as a result of that are Awards for All for small grants and Reaching Communities for larger grants. We do distribute other monies, but that's the very specific funding opportunities that we have, and our website always has perhaps 3 or 4 other funding possibilities, quite often England-wide rather than localised, where money comes from somewhere other than lottery tickets. But for the primary purpose of what we're talking about today, and for most of what we do as an organisation, we've got Awards for All, which is our small grant scheme, £300 up to £20,000, and you can have that money for a period of up to 2 years. Can only ever have one of those at any one time. And then Reaching Communities, which is a larger grant scheme, the one that, as Sarah said, the 2 of us work on, where you have a local funding officer that helps you through the process. That is for grants of over 20,000. There isn't an upper limit, but we don't have enough money to go sky high with very many grants, and that's to a maximum of 5 years. And whilst we are moving into this new strategy, Reaching Communities is heading there right now. As we say, Awards for All is going to be moving there more slowly. There have been some changes to Awards for All, like the going up to 20,000. You may remember that there used to be a maximum of 10,000, but the actual move to the new strategy and the ways of thinking and who we're going to help the most, and the missions and so on, that is going to move slightly more slowly through Awards for All. I think the next slide then. Charities, charitable companies, not-for-profit organisations, as it says there, they're the primary groups that we can fund. There needs to be some sort of management or board. There need to be a number of people involved. There has to be more than 2 people within the board situation, for example. And if there are 2 people, then they need those people need to be unrelated, and that can mean anything from actually being blood relations to being in a relationship, living in the same property. Any sort of connection like that means that is not a suitable sort of setup for us to fund. We do fund, particularly with the smaller grants through Awards for All, fund unincorporated organisations, but it may be worth an organisation that is unincorporated looking at becoming incorporated. We're not experts in this, certainly not Sarah and I, but there is a personal liability that you might have if you're in an unincorporated situation, which may not be the right setup for you. for personal liability, for the legal responsibility, where you're taking on several thousand or tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of public money. There's a list there of some of the sort of people and organisations that we can't accept applications from. I would imagine, as with most funding situations, that's a fairly common and not a surprise to see those written there. So a little bit of information, just very briefly, about the two different small and large grant schemes. If we move on to the next slide, thank you. So, as I say, National Lottery Awards for All is a smaller grant scheme, £300 up to £20,000 over a maximum period of 24 months, 2 years. As with Reaching Communities, it's a rolling, we don't have deadlines. You can apply at any time, but you can only have one Awards for All grant within a grant period. So within a single year, between 2 years, however long you've got that grant for, you cannot apply for another one for as long as that one is running, and certainly cannot reapply within 12 months of the first point of award. Awards for All more generally is going to, by its nature, be more for smaller groups, as it says there, but it's a very simple application process and a relatively swift turnaround from you putting that application into a full decision. More often than not is within 3 months. There are times when things get busier and it can perhaps be 4, but that is by far a quicker turnaround process than our larger Reaching Communities grant scheme. And it's just 3 questions that need to be answered via our website, and everything that we're saying here today is available information on our website, plus an awful lot more, and the details of that, I believe, are going to follow at the end of this. And Awards for All, as with Reaching Communities, because of the fact that so many people apply, there are an awful lot of groups that are unsuccessful, but it is a good way to access smaller, in inverted commas, levels of funding in a relatively short space of time. As with anything that we do, Awards for All are also looking for that community involvement, right at the heart of what they're doing. And on the next slide, just a little bit more information about those 3 questions that you'd be asked, and then what it is that a project needs to be doing. So bringing people together, building strong relationships within communities, improving the places and spaces that matter to those communities. And as I said already, community doesn't necessarily mean a bunch of people that happen to live nearby. A community can be a community of interest, people sharing the same issues in their lives and requiring the same services or support. Helping people to reach their potential, supporting them at the earliest possible time, and it mentions the cost of living crisis there. There are still impacts, obviously, from that, and obviously the increase in the cost of utilities and so on. There are certain things that obviously have been massively impacted over the last few years, with the pandemic before that as well, that are taken into consideration when these applications are being looked at. And those, the first 3 of those there on the projects that'll do at least one of these things at the bottom of the page there, those have been the 3 priorities that the Community Fund has been looking at in its applications for the past several years. And a little bit later on, we'll talk about what the new missions are, which are effectively going to be replacing those from 1st of April within Reaching Communities, slightly slower time with Awards for All. And I think at this point, I shall hand it back to Sarah.
And I'll remember to unmute. Thank you. So Reaching Communities. So a bit more comfortable talking about Reaching Communities. This is Matt and I's sort of day job, really. And although there are changes, so we're kind of working our way through those as well. So as you can see on the screen, hopefully, for grants over 20,000, and it can go up to 5 years, applications are online where possible, and we do like for that to happen as much as possible, but I think we are working on making other options more readily available. So we can take, and we do like video applications. We do need some data alongside that, so there might be a bit of form filling in to accompany that where possible. But video applications can say quite a lot, really. So your video should be no longer than around 5 minutes. And there's some pretty good guidance on our website of what sort of things to include in a video, so the sort of information it should relay. So again, definitely worth looking at the website. The next point down, requests should be proportionate to the organisation's income. And I think this is the thing that some groups do struggle with. So it's kind of looking at the size, how established your organisation is. For example, if it was a very new organisation just started in the last few months and you came into it for a large grant of over, say, 100,000, that would be quite unlikely. Obviously, it's a case by case, and there are certain situations that might change that. But yeah, definitely looking at what's proportionate to your income as an organisation. So what we can fund, so we can fund projects from 1 to 5 years on reaching communities. Usually projects are 18 months and over, just due to the time scale and the process involved. It's quite a lengthy process, so by the time you've finished, it's almost time to look at other funding. But for pilot projects, that sometimes works for shorter funding. We can look at direct project related costs or core fixed costs, for example, overheads, rent, etc. Our core costs are quite new for the fund, new-ish, but we can help with that as well. We can fund single organisations or collaborations or partnerships between multiple organisations. So we can still do that, and we still will be able to do that with our new way of working. So going forwards, yes, collaborations and partnerships are definitely sort of a strength, really. Capital costs and revenue we can fund. We don't have a capital project, a capital programme as such. So we don't have a large budget for large capital projects, but we can certainly help towards some costs, some capital costs. We'll perhaps talk a bit more about that later. I'm not sure if it comes up, but if you've got any questions, particularly on capital, we can have a little chat. Organisational development, so we can support groups to strengthen their governance, sustainability, business planning, testing new ways of working, staff training and development. This would usually be alongside project costs or core costs, but this might be changing moving forward. And we can fund new or existing work, so tried and tested project ideas or new projects, pilot projects, and test and learn approaches. And then with our new strategy, we may also be able to support organisations to reduce their environmental impact, and there might be some budget towards that as well alongside projects. Okay, so this is a bit of a you can sort of see the process of the reaching communities. As I said, it is a fairly in-depth and lengthy process. It's 2 stages. There are 2 panels involved. Once you put your application in, we would hope to have a first decision for you within 16 weeks. So we'd come back and let you know if your project was invited through to the next stage. At that next stage, once we've got all the information in, it can take between 12 and 20 weeks plus sometimes. Sometimes capital projects take a bit longer, but it depends on the complexity and the individual project as to how long that takes. And new questions or revised questions will be on the website as of April. So it might be worth having a look on from then, the sort of things that we're going to be asking. I can't imagine it will be very different to what we ask now, but it might be worded slightly different. It might evolve as time goes on. But in your initial application online, or whether it's via a video, just be nice and clear, as succinct as possible. I think there's a 500-word limit currently on the website, and some people use all of that. Some people just limit their words, but yeah, if it comes across as clearly as possible, that's great. And then so second stage, if you are invited to make a full funding proposal, the information you're asked for will vary depending on the complexity and the scale of the proposal. So a fair bit of work goes into this stage on both sides. So there, it's quite an in-depth process. Your funding officer will let you know what information is needed, and it will include things like your organisation's financial position, your accounts, a budget, an in-depth budget. And we would also want to know that you have all relevant policies and procedures in place and that they are used in practice and up to date. A proportionate amount of information at this stage. So, for example, if you were asking for 30,000, we would not expect the same amount of information as a project that was asking for 250,000. So that is proportionate. And again, you can be guided a little bit by your funding officer, and we'll kind of guide you on roughly the amount of information we'd expect to see. So we don't get reams and reams and then yeah, waste anyone's time. Okay, so our new Reaching Communities priorities. So the as of April, all successful projects must meet all three of these priorities. Some we've spoken about already. I think Matt spoke about our equity-based and more targeted approach. So that's the first one. The second one is about our community agency, community empowerment, and ensuring that communities lead the projects and shape decisions that affect their lives. And again, Matt spoke about that, that projects need to be very much community-led, and that needs to be clear to us that they are sort of led by the community, that they're making the changes. And the third is that all projects must fit with at least one of our 4 missions, which I will go through on the next slide. So these have been around for a little while now. They won't properly come into play until April, but if you've had a look at the website, they have been there for some time. And it might be worth, I think, if I just go through each one. So we've got a bit of an overview, but again, any more information on this, then the website is the place to go, really. So coming together. So we will support communities to come together by creating accessible, welcoming places, both physical, virtual, for people to meet. Initiating engaging and inclusive activities that support connections within and between groups of people. Enabling people from all backgrounds to shape the future of their communities, and cultivating an increased sense of belonging. So that's the first one, bringing people together, which is similar along the lines of bringing people together, which we currently look at. We will support environmentally sustainable communities. So this is the environmental one, which is fairly new to all of us. So we're going to look at reduced carbon emissions and negative environmental impact, create positive environmental impacts, established equality of access to the natural environment, and improve the quality of natural spaces. And then moving on to helping children and young people, will enable children and young people to thrive by creating opportunities for children and young people from all backgrounds to enjoy community experiences. Helping children and young people shape the decisions that affect them and their communities. Providing children and young people access to safe spaces to play, participate, socialise, and get support. And then the last one is we'll enable people to live healthier lives by helping reduce health inequalities, increasing opportunities for community participation to shape better, healthier health services, and taking a preventative approach to health. And so over time, we'll move all of our England grant programmes to align with these new missions. But as we say, for now, it's the Reaching Communities that are really looking at these missions. Okay, so this is if you are successful and are awarded a grant, it's more important than ever that groups can measure the impact of their projects. This is, in other words, the difference your project makes to the people that you're supporting and your beneficiaries. And to help with this, we've got an outcomes framework on the website, which gives suggestions of tools that you can measure the impact with, depending on the type of project that it is. There's also online support. There's various infrastructure groups that can support sort of our local infrastructure support groups. NCVO, and in the future, our own More Than a Funder support will hopefully help groups with measuring their impact. You can budget for this, so this can be a line on the budget. Mostly this would be internal. Groups choose to do this internally, unless it's a really large project and you're looking to be commissioned in time or to expand, for example, into another county. Then you might want to pay someone to evaluate your project, but yes, there is budget for that as well. And we would want you to share your learning and be open and honest about the progress. We can be a flexible funder, so we can work with you. Not everything always goes according to plan, and budgets need to change sometimes, staffing issues, recruitment delays, things like that. Anything can happen. So we just ask for your honesty and openness throughout the process, and communication. Okay, I'm going to hand back over to Matt for our partnership slide.
So I mentioned partnerships earlier and the fact that we can award money to organisations working together to deliver a project or deliver a service, and we consider it a partnership when we're talking about it within our usual funding alongside Reaching Communities as a situation where more than one of those is going to be spending the grant monies rather than them just sort of collaborating but only one organisation spending the money. This slide relates to something that has absolutely come out of our strategy renewal, much of which has been driven by the conversations that the funders had with all sorts of people and organisations across the wider charity and giving sector. And one of the things that was loud and clear was that it would be great for the fund to be able better enable local organisations to deliver perhaps in a broader sense, and sometimes perhaps we're talking in a more national way, and for some of the process perhaps to be not as centralised with us, but to actually happen out there in the communities. So there are currently 3 different partnership intentions that have gone live, as it were. There's information about them all on our website, and I'll mention them briefly, but there were expressions of interest required up until February, so that's now closed, and there is a process now happening whereby these schemes are being sort of formalised and the lead partners are being put in place. But what that'll mean is they'll be within the money that has come from the lottery. I said earlier, we have other funds that other funds that come in, and we deliver other sort of funding opportunities as a result of that money. This is lottery money that is now going to be available through something other than just Awards for All and Reaching Communities, and certainly potentially going to be of interest as the new strategy comes further into play. I think in some cases they're looking to maybe launch some of these ideas later this year, but some of them might be slower. So there is going to be, if all goes well, a community power fund, which is going to be a 10-year investment into specific neighbourhoods as yet undecided, which will be linked to creating a better sense of agency and control within those communities, giving local people a greater bit of empowerment in what is going to be happening within their communities. This may sound very woolly. I'm going to apologise for the fact that this is not something we've been involved with, so we don't know much about it. As I say, there is more information about these partnership opportunities on our website. But these could be big news for local communities looking ahead and beyond our Reaching Communities and Awards for All areas. So that's the Community Power Fund. Very exciting. I believe that You Decide is going to be an opportunity for, it's going to be decided how it's going to work, but it's going to be out there for local communities themselves to directly decide how money can be spent in their area. So of the roughly 500 million that will be coming into Reaching Communities on an annual basis, at least 5% of that is intended to go into this You Decide fund. the ways in which this is going to happen, as I say, being developed, but there will be the opportunity for local communities to themselves decide how that percentage of this lottery money will be spent locally. And the third one is a grant holder support program, which is going to be about putting some money into civil society organisations and communities to better enable them to build their own resilience and sustainability for the future. Again, it's all in development. Processes are happening. If you're interested in any of those three, the Community Power Fund, You Decide Fund, and the Grant Holder Support Programme, there is a fair amount of information on our website. And it may be worth having a little look and learning a bit more than I can possibly tell you.